Lindsay, you ready to set this off?
I am.
All right, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Foster. I work at Tarrant County College in Fort Worth, Texas as an instructional designer specializing in accessibility.
All right, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Excited.
This conversation came about from the Facebook group, Steve Sherman, right?
Yes.
Big shout out to Steve Sherman for starting the ISTE
Global Connections. Global collaboration.
Group, something like that, yeah. Yeah, so put it out there, got some people, and you jumped on it and said, I'd love to be on the show to talk about accessibility, right?
Yes, I would love to talk about accessibility.
All right, so you're at the college level.
I am at the higher ed level. I was formerly K-12.
Okay, talk to us.
So I started out as a classroom teacher, became an ed tech coach, moved to an ed tech coordinator, and then I went back to work for a previous supervisor boss that I had in K-12. She moved to higher ed and became an instructional designer, which is a slight shift from being a classroom teacher. It's more on the design piece of building content. And then I fell into accessibility through that work, and I took over for a person in our department who left to go to another institution in the accessibility job about 2 years ago. I work primarily with faculty, but I also work with our staff to make sure that all of the resources that we're providing our stakeholders, primarily students, but also anybody who's investigating our institution, that it's fully accessible. So it works on screen readers, and it's accessible to people who have hearing impairments, and we watch for things like color blindness, and it's a lot.
Okay, all right. Now, accessibility is really at the forefront right now.
It is.
I haven't heard this much talk about making sure things are accessible ever, as I have within the past, I would say 4 years, 3 to 4 years. Now, when we talk about accessibility, talk to us a little bit about what that means. What does the term mean, accessibility?
I think that's a great question, Gabriel. A lot of people think accessibility with a small a, and the work that I do and what I discuss is with the capital A accessibility. When a lot of people say, our products are accessible or we're making them accessible, they really mean that you can access them or get to them.
Yeah.
When
we're
link.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, that it's available
yeah.
is probably a better synonym to use. When we're talking about the big A accessibility, if you think of things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which has sections 504 and 508 is specifically related to digital accessibility. We're talking about providing a level platform so that everybody has an opportunity to get the information or access the building. In the case of physical accessibility, universal design for learning is probably something that a lot of your listeners are very familiar with. And when we're talking about accessibility, that's within that universal design for learning umbrella. And the work that I do specifically is on digital accessibility. The U.S. Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Justice, through the Office of Civil Rights, just released a final ruling in April of this past year that all digital documents and websites and mobile apps need to be compliant with the Web Consortium Accessibility Guidelines, the WCAG, or some people call them the WCAG.
Okay.
And it depends upon your population. And the final ruling says all public entities and government entities. But then there's a subsection that defines those public entities, and K-12 and higher ed institutions that are publicly funded fall within those standards. So the final ruling said that depending upon your population size, your community size, that's when you have to be in compliance with these guidelines that a lot of people don't even know anything about. I certainly, as a K-12 educator, didn't know anything about it. I didn't learn about it until I got into the accessibility work that I'm doing now. So if your population is 0 to 49,999 people, and think of your community that you live in, your county, your city, you would have to be compliant with WCAG no later than April of 2027. If your population is 50,000 or greater, you have to be in compliance by April of 2026. And there are 5 areas of focus in the WCAG. The main 4 are is your digital resource perceivable, operable, understandable, and it's poor. R is readable,
Okay.
And then the fifth section actually has
POUR
to do.
is the acronym?
POUR is the acronym, POUR, like
Okay.
pour a picture.
Got it.
So perceivable, operable, understandable, and readable. And then the fifth section actually has to do with things like voluntary VPATs, the voluntary accessibility templates, product accessibility templates, or the accessibility conformance reports, the ACRs. It has to do with those kinds of things. A lot of people don't do that, but you're going to be, the people that will be involved in this are not only educators and curriculum writers, it's also going to be your IT department that's coding your stuff, or the company that's building, let's say, your district's website.
Okay. If I'm a teacher and I'm doing something along the lines of a slide deck to show to students, and maybe putting it in my learning management system for them to be able to go back to it and make it available to them. I almost used the other word, the lowercase one, but I'm just going to use the term available for them to look at, study, or what have you. What are some things I have to keep in mind when creating that slide deck to make sure that it is capital A accessible? That's
a great question, because that would fall as one of those digital documents that has to be capital A accessible when you're making it small a accessible. So when you're doing slide decks, I think one of the, we call it at my institution, we've been working with our faculty, we call it the Fast Five. It's 5 very small things that you can do that will immediately address some of the major concerns. So one of them is that when you're using a document tool like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, they have layouts available and they have headings available. In those formatting tools, in the formatting menus, you can apply the headings. And you'll know that you're doing it because, like in Google Docs, you get that outline format and the left-hand side, or in Microsoft, you can change the navigation and see that navigation pane. And if you apply those, it allows someone with a screen reader to skip through your document, just like when you're reading a nonfiction text and you look for those bigger headings. It's that same thing. The screen reader allows them to push the H key on their keyboard and jump from heading to heading so that they don't have to start at the top of the document. If they left off in the middle, they can go back to the middle and pick up where they left off. So using those formatting tools is really important, particularly in presentations. I know we all love, I was a K-12 educator. I am an elementary educator by training. I love my colors and I love to make my own slide decks. And I love my designs. You know, everything in my room was rainbows. I used color organization. But I've learned through accessibility that using the layouts option and the master slides is really important. So if you want to create your backgrounds and have something really interesting, just put it in, go into the master slide deck and set your master slides and then build from there. Because one of the things that I didn't know until I got into the accessibility work is that if you start from a blank slide and you add the elements onto the slide, like let's say you add a text box and then you add an image and then you add another text box and then you put the title on, unless you go back at the end and set the reading order for a screen reader, it reads it in the order in which you added it to the slide. So it could be very confusing for a student who's relying on a screen reader, because they're getting the content jumbled in the order in which you added it, because that's the order in which you conceived it. So, and some screen readers don't pick up things that you add to slides. They only read the general layout. So if you start with a master slide and you use a layout template and then you add another text box, it might completely skip the text box, depending upon how the end user has their screen reader set sensitivity-wise. So I recommend always starting with those templates. Another thing to be aware of is color. That's a big one. It's huge. And I didn't realize, did you know that the statistics are 1 out of every 10 males is colorblind or color deficient? They're not really blind to color. They have a deficiency in color.
I did not know that. I know somebody who is.
Yeah, and a lot of people do.
Had I not known.
And so things like the most prevalent color deficiency is red-green, but there's also blue-yellow, which I didn't know about.
Wow.
And there are a lot of tools. There are some really great apps that you can use that you can put on your phone and check for color blindness and check your documents. But one of the things I didn't realize is that you need to have appropriate color contrast. You know, we always think about books are black or white pages with black text.
Black text.
There's a reason for that, because that color contrast is significant enough that you can read it. Think about the times where you've seen, you've gone to a website and you go to click a button and it's like a grayed out button with gray text. And you're like, what the heck does that say? And you can't read it. Monochrome color schemes are really challenging, like gray on gray, blue on blue. So you need to have what's called appropriate color contrast. WebAIM, it's WEB capital AIM, has a great color contrast checker, and it will give you a green check mark, and it will say pass with the check mark, which is another thing. It doesn't just rely on the color green or the check mark. It tells you the word pass.
How do I know?
Or it will give you a red circle with a white X that says fail, and it will tell you based on the background color and the foreground color if it passes or fails. You can upload your images, and if you have text on an image, and it's important that you have color contrast, and that kind of leads into the next really easy micro change, which is with images, make sure that you're putting in that alt text. Please don't use alt text as additional fun information or to promote your product. Please use it for those people who need it, for screen readers. Give the same information. I like to use the example, we had an organization, we regularly do blood drives at our campus about 2 or 3 times a semester. And the organization that does the blood drives is amazing. And I got a PDF, and they had flattened the entire PDF to an image.
Okay.
And the PDF, I'm visual and I can read. I don't need a screen reader to assist me to process documents. But I was using a screen reader to test it, and the only thing it said was the name of the company blood drive. That was the entire alt text for the entire document. The document included all of the information of the locations, the several locations where they were offering blood drive events, the dates, the times. It had all the requirements that you needed in order to give blood. It also had a little inserted picture of a quarter zip jacket that if you were one of the first 50 people who showed up to the blood drive that day, each day they were giving away 50 jackets.
Oh.
And I said...
But because they flattened it.
And the only alt text was so-and-so's blood drive, someone using a screen reader wouldn't get that same information. So, we always say a picture is worth 1,000 words.
That one was worth
0.
Okay.
So you want to make sure, like, if you are using your social media and you're using images and you're talking about the school dance and this is the date and this is the time and these are the things you need to bring and you have to have a signed permission form, make sure you put all that information in the alt text or in the text surrounding that image so that everybody gets the same information.
And don't flatten the image.
You can flatten it. You just have to make sure that you include it for someone using a screen reader.
Okay, that's good to know.
It is good to know, and
really,
people
really
don't.
Good to know.
People don't realize that's And I called the company and I said, is there a reason that people? I know that there are restrictions on blood donation. Is there a reason that someone who's visually impaired couldn't donate blood? And they said no. And I said, well, you are missing an entire population and audience because they're not getting the same information that other people are getting.
Okay. Had you not brought that to their attention?
So
good to know.
And I will say, I don't know that people realize this, but online learning and digital learning, distance learning, attracts individuals who have disabilities for a variety of reasons. At my institution, we have a high population of veterans. And according to the Veterans Affairs Department of the U.S. government, veterans have the highest instance of hearing impairment in our country. It's most related to job, like they lost their hearing as a relation within their job responsibilities.
Correct.
Think about people on aircraft carriers and people doing ordnance and that sort of thing. If you're around bombs all the time and firing machine guns, you're going to lose some of your hearing. And we recruit at our institution veterans. We encourage them to come. Well, if you have a hearing impairment and or like in this situation, if you're in a loud environment, you might forget your earbuds, closed captions on videos.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's one of the things I love about YouTube is that it'll automatically do it for you, but you got to go.
The caveat is please
edits.
Go check the hearing impaired deaf community, and I use deaf large capital D / small capital D.
There's a difference?
There are some who use a capital D deaf, and there are others who use a small d deaf. They have a term for YouTube or auto-generated captions. It's #craptions.
Really? So if I was to go on social media and look for
Craptions.
#craptions,
You would
really?
find they share examples of where people have not, and there also caption fails is another hashtag you can follow. You can see examples. There's a couple of guys who do fun podcast, vodcast type stuff, and they have one. They do nothing but record videos where they've written a script, and then they auto generate the captions, and they use those captions to make another iteration of the video, and it shows you how horrible,
how different,
and how terrible it can be.
is.
I have the example. I keep a list. I have a whiteboard in my office, and I keep a list of examples of craptions. And one of my favorites, I worked on a geology class with my geology professors, and there's a concept in geology where you have two tectonic plates, one that is above the other, pushing the other one down. It's called subductive plates.
Yes.
We use Canvas LMS. That just happens to be the LMS that we use. We also have a tool that we use called Canvas Studio. It does an amazing job. I will say their auto captioning tools 85 to 90% accurate most of the time. However, it did not recognize that academic vocabulary, and it changed it to seductive plates
Oh,
throughout the entire lecture.
seductive plates.
My geology professors laughed and thought it was really funny, and they said maybe more people would register for geology if they thought that's what it was about.
But that takes away from the
Context. It
context of the content.
Exactly. So it's not just about making sure that you have the right words, like the accuracy of spelling, the YouTube
Punctuation.
The YouTube the auto generator is notorious for not applying any punctuation. It's one long run-on sentence. Capitalization, but also accuracy of meaning. Make sure that it's pair of shoes, PAIR, not PEAR of shoes.
Yeah.
And then, or you get seductive plates.
Muy caliente. We don't want that. No, we want no craptions here.
So, but it is kind of fun to go look up those accidents because it's very interesting to see them.
Yeah. That's one thing that I'm pretty proud of is when I do, like, for example, what we're doing now, I'll turn this conversation into maybe 3 or 4 1-minute clips, to put on social media.
Sure.
And I use Adobe Premiere, and they have auto captioning tool that's pretty dang accurate.
That is an amazingly accurate tool.
There's
yes.
very minimal things that I got to change in there. I always have to change my last name, Carrillo. It never knows how to spell my name.
Really, the AI hasn't picked up
Carrillo.
Right.
And there's certain little nuances, but it's very accurate with putting the commas in the pauses and things like that. So to the point where, like I said, I don't have to do a whole lot, but that's the beauty of it is I now know, because I've been using that tool for quite some time and it's auto captioning tool, I know what to look for now.
And that's a great example of one of the benefits of AI and accessibility is that the AI is training on your voice and your speech patterns. For example, at my institution, my campus president his first language is not English.
Okay.
He's a native speaker of Spanish. English is his second language. He does an amazing job. The more that we have videoed Dr. Morales, the more the AI in Canvas Studio, which is fairly accurate, has learned his speech patterns.
Wow.
And it no longer makes the errors that it initially made when we started feeding it video. So as I encourage people, as you are making your media, the more media clips you feed to those AI generators that are creating your auto captioning, they will learn. I'm surprised that Adobe Premiere has not picked up how to spell your name because you've constantly corrected it.
Yeah.
I can tell
Come
you,
on,
I can guess that our tool would probably spell it Carrillo, and it'd be like CARRY space YO.
Yeah, I've seen it spelled actually incorrectly in a couple different ways. Yeah, so
I can kind of guess how it would try to generate that, but it's a very small thing, but it's a very important thing because it changes the meaning for folks.
Yeah.
And imagine having to listen to one constant run-on sentence with no breath.
Oh my gosh.
It's a little crazy.
When that screen reader goes and it doesn't stop.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop. The other thing, to get back to that presentation, so our fast five is headings and formatting. It's applying things. If I always say it's the duck rule. If it looks like a list and it appears to be a list, you should format it as a list.
Make it a bulleted list.
And don't use asterisks or dashes or hyphens. Use the bulleting formatting or the numbered formatting tool. Yeah. So it's headings, links, or headings, lists, images we've talked about, links, making sure that you are properly formatting links. Now, Microsoft and Google do an amazing job of using links in context. So when you start to type a link, it puts the place that you're going to instead of HTTP : Have you ever been in your car and had somebody send you an image and all you get is a bunch of gobbledygook letters and then .png?
Yeah.
That's what happens to someone when you put in the full URL. They get letter by letter every piece of the URL. So if it's a really long citation, they're going to get nothing but letters.
So what you're telling me is I should format it as a hyperlink to the piece of text. So if, like, for example, this episode is sponsored by WeVideo. The word WeVideo should be WeVideo hyperlinked, creating the highlight or the color change in the text.
Yes.
And then linking to www.
Tell the end user where they're going, and avoid using terms like, just close your eyes for me a second, Gabriel. I know. Point to here, or there, or click, or click here.
Okay.
We have a tendency to say click here, click there, click.
Click on the image below.
Right. It is better to say, if we're going to WeVideo, because they're the sponsor, say, our sponsor today is WeVideo. Instead of saying click this link to view the sponsor, just say WeVideo is our sponsor, highlight the word WeVideo and hyperlink it. That is because the screen reader will announce link, and then it will say WeVideo. It will tell them that it is a link and they are going to go to WeVideo. So I always tell my instructors, if you're sending them to the library webpage, just tell them TCC library. Don't say click here to go to the library.
All right.
And so you just pick the words in the sentence that make most sense and hyperlink them. Okay. And that's much more accessible. It's called a link in context or a link in purpose. So we do headings, links, lists, images, and then we shouldn't use tables for formatting. Tables should be used to organize information like data. They should not be used to set your web page up so that everything appears in columns. There's actually code that will help you set up. That's called a grid code. Yeah. It's open out there. And I have it. If people want it, I can share the code with you. You can actually
please.
You can actually ask AI to create that for you. But if you're using a table to
just to format the page,
page, what happens is that the end user who's using a screen reader, it announces that there's a table, and the table will start in basically what's cell A1, and it will try to identify a header row and a header column. And if there isn't any header row or column because you're using it to organize your content, the screen reader stops.
Oh, no way.
Because it doesn't know where to go, and it doesn't know what it's doing. And the end
Lindsay,
user doesn't know if it's broken.
You're blowing my mind right now of how many things I'm doing incorrectly. So there's a lot of people, and I'm not going to say everyone except me. I do this as well.
I did too.
I still to this day create like a Google Doc in a table format so it looks like a sheet, but I don't want it to be a sheet. I want it to be a doc because I'm hard-headed like that. Yeah,
make the sheet and embed the sheet into the doc.
Okay.
That's for accessibility. We need to have it be, if it's supposed to be a spreadsheet, if you're organized. Now, if you're setting up, let's say, the lunch menu that has Monday through Friday for your school, and each day, each cell has the entree, the sides, and the milk and the juice, that is information. You're using the table to organize information. That's an appropriate use. Or a calendar of events for your class. That's an appropriate organization. But it's not okay to use it to make the
format a page.
Images all in order.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of blanks.
Yeah.
Blank cells, if you want to call
blank
them.
Cells. So Yeah. So those are 5 things. I call them micro changes. They're really simple things. And I always tell my instructors, pick
shift.
one and get really good at that one, and then pick the next one and get really good at that one. Because when I started doing accessibility work, and this is for, the people in the back of the room, when I started doing accessibility work and I learned what I had not been doing, because I didn't know what I didn't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
And I didn't know better, so I couldn't do better. I felt like I had failed every student I'd ever taught.
That's basically how I feel.
And I felt, and I was like, oh my God, I'm a horrible human being. I'm awful. I've always said I'm inclusive, and all means all, and I wanted to teach all my kids, and I've done a terrible job, and I'm a bad person. You are not a bad person. You didn't know what you didn't know. But now that you know better, do better.
Do gooder.
Do gooder. Pick one thing, get really good at it, whether it's color, making sure that you have your color contrast, get really good at identifying that, whether it's choosing those layouts and get really good at doing that, whether it's applying headings to your documents and getting everybody on your team to do that. Pick that one thing, get really good at it, and then pick up the next thing. Because I equate accessibility to the Couch to 5K program. Are you familiar with that? That running
Couch to 5K?
Yeah, the running program, Couch to 5K.
Yeah.
Where they say, if you are up off the couch, no matter where you are in your running program, even if you're not running a 5K, you're ahead of the people on the couch.
Yeah.
If you are doing one of those 5 things I've talked about today, you're ahead of the people who are sitting on the couch and doing nothing.
I like that.
And there are
I like that analogy.
There are a variety of tools out there that are automated checkers. Microsoft has it embedded in all of their tools. They have an accessibility checker.
Yeah.
They're ahead of Google on that one.
Big time.
And Google needs to catch up.
Yeah.
I love my Google. But Microsoft, use that accessibility checker. It literally walks you through, and it will mention things that I didn't mention today. It walks you through the steps and tells you what's wrong and how you need to fix it.
Okay. You've given us a lot to think about. After I go home and sulk in my tears, I'm going to, like you said, I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick one, get good at it, and then just keep on trucking down that pour. Okay.
And I bet for your podcast, you provide a transcript.
Well, most services already provide the transcript.
Because
Apple Podcast is actually very, very good. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Apple Podcast transcription. Yeah, they're pretty accurate. But, man, all right. I got a lot of work to do this summer. How can people connect with you?
So I am available via email at LF, like Larry Frank, techteach@gmail. Or I'm on social media at LF Tech Teach on that platform formerly known as Twitter.
Twix.
There you go. I'm on Insta at L Foster Tech Teach because I couldn't get my Twitter handle. And I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook in a variety of ways. But if you Google Lindsay Foster, you can usually find me because I haven't hidden. I've been voracious on the web for a while. So
all right.
My footprint is there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everything that you're contributing to our educational space and everything you've given both myself and the listeners and viewers something to think about when it comes to accessibility. I feel like we can keep going on this conversation, but that maybe we could save that for another time.
I was going to say, we might have to do a follow-up.
Yeah, let's do that at some point. All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference experience. And like I said, you've given me a lot to think about. So thank you, Lindsay, and everything you're doing.
And thank you, Gabriel, for this platform to share and for what you're doing for education because it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I have one last question for you before you go. Corn tortillas or flour tortillas?
Corn.
Okay. I'm team corn all the way. So that's why we get along so well.
Because you can turn them into chips.
Yeah, you can turn them into so much. Chilaquiles, enchiladas.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole nother, that's accessibility for me. That's my accessibility. So, all right. Sounds good. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
You too.
All right.